and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Bob Caprillion. The Armenian Missionary Association of America, the AMAA, recently celebrated its 100th annual banquet. The co-chairs of this, and I would say historic event, are John and Michèle Simourian. The founding of the AMAA was in Worcester, Massachusetts, 101 years ago. It followed the Armenian genocide, which was perpetrated by the Ottoman Turks. Hundreds of thousands of Armenian men, women, children were driven into the desert to suffer and die. And this is how the AMAA was born, to aid where it could. Today, the AMAA continues its mission into the 21st century, bringing help, comfort, wherever they find it throughout the world. This banquet was just a wonderful event, and I'd like to show a clip from it, and we'll see you on the other side. And it's my honor and privilege to have at this table John Michèle Simourian. Welcome, and thank you for this wonderful, by all standards, just a wonderful event.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for having us here,
Yes.
Michèle,
Yes.
you know, you have given your heart, your soul, your energy for 35 years to a mission, a project that is kind of a part of your DNA. And like us all, sometimes we get more in return than we give. Why don't you talk a little bit about your commitment in what you get from the AMAA?
What I get out of the AMAA is to be able to return an iota of what God has given me. It's utter gratitude for all the amazing life He's given me. When I think to my ancestors' lives, my grandmother, my mother, who was born in the Deir Zor desert, and giving me a life of plenty in contrast to the lives of utter misery and suffering that my mother, born in the desert, my father, born 4 years before his father was killed at age 32, my mother's father, 41. I'm just so privileged to be living in this beautiful country with all of the material wealth that God has given me in this beautiful country, that I don't know how I would serve in a better capacity than to be able to do for others what I have been given to share with others.
You know, when I was sitting one table behind you, and when they showed that video, in that we had a clip of it, of the men, women, and children being marched into the desert, I saw you close your eyes and look away. So you have a real connection with that event.
I do.
Yeah.
Sadly,
Yeah.
my father was made to watch while his father was shot, along with all his brothers and his father.
Mm-hmm.
Never saw his children grow. And my mother was born 4 months after her father was killed in the desert. So, and then growing up in France during World War II, I have this inability and this great sensitivity to anything that has to do with suffering of people, no matter who, no matter where. It seems to me a natural thing to have worked with both the American community with children who are sick at Children's Hospital in Boston, raising funds for that hospital, and later for our people who are scattered in 24 countries, some of them still suffering the ills of genocide, which perpetuates itself, it seems like. What's going on in Syria, what's going on in Lebanon, it just goes on. And so we need to help.
Well, you know, some people have the means and the energy and the time, but essentially what they do, they pull a ladder up, saying, I made mine, you do, you're on your own. That's not what John and Michèle Simourian have done over a long period of time. So my compliments. I'm proud to know you.
Let me tell you, it's a privilege to be where we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's a privilege to be able to give back. It's a privilege to serve God.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit, broaden the goals and of the AMAA, Armenian Missionary Association. They've, in my brief time working with it, there seems to be some misconceptions I would like you to, and John, to clarify. It's ecumenical in nature. It's wide-reaching. It's not, well, why instead of me talking, why don't you?
The Armenian Protestant organization population is much smaller than the Armenian population at large. We never ask anyone what particular liturgy they follow. We're just a missionary organization in the true sense of that word, which is to carry the word of God, to do the work of God, to bring help where it's needed. No one ever asks, medical, whatever. If you need something and we can meet that need, and God knows that, it's hard to meet every need, so we do the best we can. But that is our main purpose, always has been. We just want to be able to help children, especially with education, and bring them up to having a way to fish so that they can sustain themselves, bring them out of poverty, and the best way we know how is education. But we also, at the other end of the spectrum, also take care of our elderly who sometimes suffer, because who suffers the most? Children, the ill, and the elderly. So, yeah, it's non-sectarian, totally, in all the 24 countries in which we serve.
You know, it's such an amazing, wonderful association, and I was kind of struck by that. I didn't know all that much about it, and I'm not sure why, but there should be more people knowing about what the AMA does, and so that's my thoughts on that, and I wish you'd pass it on to the well, specifically some of the projects that that are in place now that is at the thrust of the AMAA. Can you? I know there was a school.
Oh, in 24 countries, and right now, well, I mean, Bulgaria, Romania, Artsakh, which is part of Armenia, Egypt, Iran, Turkey, any one, 24 countries, including the United States. So we have programs in the United States too for some of our children in summer camp programs. We have humanitarian, educational, evangelistic, and enhancing youth through programs in summer camps and after-school programs. In France, we help with 2 summer camps. I was in one of those summer camps visiting. It's unbelievable the nice work that is taking place there, turning children to very worthwhile lives through belief in God and trying to follow in Christ's footsteps. So we are involved in that in this country, in France, in Belgium, but in Armenia, which is the thrust right now because the need was so great after the earthquake, and we as an organization were involved there from day one almost, as soon as our executive director, Reverend Moses Jambazian, could get over there and assess the needs, then walked in medical teams and dental teams and after-school programs. And now in Armenia and Artsakh, some of our families are in real trouble, and some of the children are suffering from dysfunctional families. So we have shore centers, which means bright, clear. Those centers have social workers who looked at the needs of the children psychologically and also try to help the families to become more functional with the children and educate them so that the children can grow with that. But that's the kind of thing. After school programs, when we first started English as a second language, I remember, we set up little labs, computers, the Avedisian School, which is LEED certified, the first institution in the country to be totally green, in which we have children graduating in the poorest section of Armenia. It's called Bangladesh because they are so poor, which no one else out of the area can go to, even though some people would love to send their children, totally free. Each graduate of that school, and you saw one at the banquet, goes on to college, tuition free. Everything's free, including a free meal. So, and then grandparents programs for the elderly. I don't know where to stop.
Well, in 1988, the catastrophe of the earthquake, certainly the AMAA was front and center. But there's a story that I'd like to talk about. When this happened, you said to John, if I remember the story right, John, we have to do something. Well, John did do something. There's a saying, once a Marine, always a Marine. Once a teammate, always a teammate. And your teammate, the late Senator Ted Kennedy, was always a teammate. Why don't you walk us through from the thought, John, we have to do something, to what you did, that you initiated, what you accomplished, 1988.
Well, as you said, Bob, we went to Michelle told me that we needed to go to a gathering because they were going to talk about what the Armenian community in this area could do for the people who had been devastated by the earthquake. And so we went and listened, and everyone talked as usual. And then on the way home, that's when Michelle said to me, we need to do something. And she knew of my relationships with some of the guys I had played football with, and some of them that I had played against, and said to me, why don't you call Vern Laux? Vern Laux was an end on the Yale football team when I was in college, and we played against each other for 4 years. And after we graduated, about 25 years later, he was highlighted in the New York Times, and I hadn't spoken to him since the last Harvard-Yale game we played in 1956. So I wrote him a note 25 years after we graduated. And again, I emphasize, we had never communicated with one another in 25 years. And on the field, our only communication was just an occasional,
bumping heads.
Bumping heads with each other, and maybe sometimes, congratulating each other, and sometimes not congratulating each other with a, more severe blow or something. But it just so happened that the way our teams matched up, that I was always covering him when he was on offense, and he was always hitting me when Harvard was on offense. So we got to know each other a little bit, because of that constant contact. Anyway, I wrote him a note and congratulated him on his presidency at Baxter Travanel Labs, and he wrote me back and said it was so nice to hear it from me after 25 years and stay in touch. And then that's when then the earthquake happened, and I had stayed in touch with Vern over the ensuing years from that time I wrote the note. And each time we'd go to Chicago on business, which was probably a couple times a year, I would always call to see if we could get together for dinner. And he was always out of town. But he would always send something to our hotel, chocolate, flowers, who knows what. Always something. And so that's why Michelle said to me, why don't you call your friend Vern and see if he could do something, because he's in the medical supply business, Baxter Laboratories, and perhaps he could help. Right? And so, my instant response to her, frankly, was, honey, that I haven't seen him since 1956 and haven't talked to him other than just, some communication by notes. And so she says, well, try anyway. So I picked up the phone the next morning, called his office, and lo and behold, he picked up the phone. And he had just come out of a board meeting and said that he had seen the night before the news about the tragedy in Armenia, the earthquake, and that he was discussing with his board what they could do. And he said to me, I'm going to put you in touch with my chief of staff, who's a former Air Force general, who helped negotiate the SALT talks with Russia on peace between America and Russia. And anyway, within a few hours, this general called me and told me that they were prepared to send a lot of supplies to Armenia, principally dialysis machines, because in an earthquake people get crushed and there's need for dialysis machines. And he said, so here's what I need you to do for me, John. I need you to get me 3 airplanes. Sure, no problem. 3 airplanes, and we need to send some people along with the equipment to teach them how to use the dialysis machines. So we're going to send 60 people from Baxter over. So I need visas for 60 people. So if you could get the 3 airplanes and the 60 people visas, I'd appreciate it. And I said to him, but General, you're an Air Force general. What am I doing trying to get planes? You get them. No. He said, this is not a military operation. This is something for a politician to do. Who do you know? And I said, the only politician I know well is Senator Ted Kennedy. He says none better, because he knows he has some good friends within the Soviet hierarchy. He knows all the top people in the Soviet leadership. And I said, okay, I'll call him. So I called Ted and spoke to him, and he was, as usual, very accommodating. And he said, well, let me look into it. He thought it was, initially I knew from the tone of his voice, he thought this was a wild idea. But anyway, long story short, he got the 3 planes. We got the visas for 60 people, and they loaded them, and off they went to Armenia. And a few months later, the general called me back and said things were going pretty well, but they needed some more supplies. And with his contacts within the Russian military, he arranged to have 2 or 3 Soviet planes fly into Andrews Air Force Base in Washington. He said all he needs is the landing permit. I said, you want me to get you a landing permit for 2 or 3 Soviet aircraft to land at Andrews Air Force Base? He said, yes, you can do it. Call your friend Ted.
And I need to interject. This is during the time of the Cold War still.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
1988, yeah.
Yeah.
The wall hadn't come down yet.
Right.
Gorbachev was still leading it.
Right.
So I called Ted again. I told Ted, I got another crazy request for you, but here's what they want. What do you think? He said, where are you going to be in a couple of hours? I'll call you back. And I told him, he said, okay. He called me back. He said, okay, it's done. So I called the general. I said, okay, it's done. It's all set. I'm going to give you some people. You talk to these people in Senator Kennedy's office, and you arrange all the details and take it from here, because I have no idea what to do from here in. And he said, okay, I'll take care of it. And it happened. The Soviet planes came and landed, and American Marines with Soviet, military personnel loaded those planes at Andrews Air Force Base with medical supplies from Baxter Travanor Labs, and off they flew to Yerevan, Armenia. And they were there. Vern Laux kept his people there for 9 months.
Oh boy, wow.
9 months,
Wow.
60 people, all right? All on his tab, all right? All on his tab. And then he invited us, Michèle and me, to a dinner to honor these people when they came back in Chicago. We had dinner with them. And again, I hadn't seen Vern Laux since 1956. And now this is 1989, all right? And we went to the dinner, and we stood out in the crowd, and I walked up to him, we said hello and had a few hugs and had a wonderful evening. And he gave everybody there, interestingly, I think I showed it to you once when you were at my house. He gave us a globe, a world globe. It was black, and with a gold star on it. And the gold star is on that map at Yerevan, Armenia. Yeah. So that's what happened.
I'm not sure you know how remarkable and how unlikely anybody would be able to put all those pieces together during the times, the Cold War. John, my salute. That was
well, you can salute Senator Kennedy.
Well,
yeah, he did it all. I was just a little channel to him.
But somebody had to say, "This is what needs to be done. Can you do it?" And you can't shake that. That was the guy sitting to the right of you.
Yeah, miraculous.
And the AMAA was front and center. They were
Front and center from day one.
Yeah.
I was appointed AMAA Orphan Child Care co-chair with someone on the West Coast, Elizabeth Agbabian, within 5-6 months of the occurrence. As soon as they could go figure it out, then the Reverend Moses Jambazian appointed us, and that's when we started our work for the children there.
Michèle, what is your vision of how the AMAA will grow and flourish? I'm sure you're on the board, you have meetings, you talk about this. What is your vision, and what do you think with how this can grow and flourish?
Well, it can grow and flourish with the help of the greater community of Armenians everywhere and non-Armenians. A lot of my friends who are not Armenian remotely, they support this because it's a valiant effort on the part of so many volunteers We have a board of 27 board members, unpaid. Our executive, committee, no one's paid except for the staff and the AMAA. The ratio of monies donated and working for the needs of our people is minuscule in comparison to many organizations. So I'm just hoping that it will keep on going, but I also have wonders with assimilation. I just don't know, Bob. As people grow away from their roots, as the urgency of tragedies wanes, as people get better, I don't know. It's existed for 100 years through several trials and tribulations. I can see it continuing. I want it to continue, but I don't know. It's really in God's hands. I don't know.
If I may jump in, I think, one of the things that's different between pre-earthquake and now is the fact that when the wall came down in Berlin and Armenia became an independent, free country. Again, from my perspective, where I didn't grow up the way Michèle grew up. I mean, I grew up here, and my geography wasn't close to Armenia, like France is a little closer to Armenia, and probably like you, Bob. We didn't. I don't think we maybe related that much to Armenia because it was Soviet Armenia.
That's fair.
And now, when the wall came down, it became independent. I think, Armenians around the world, and especially, I can only talk about American Armenians because those are the ones I really know well. I think they feel closer to Armenia. They say it's, the homeland. They call it the homeland. Where I don't remember people calling it the homeland before the wall came down because it was under the Soviet, umbrella. And once it came out from under the Soviet umbrella, I think that has created an opportunity for the AMAA to, and that's coincidentally, I think, and again, I don't really know, you can correct me on it, but that's when it seemed like there was more activity in Armenia from the AMA. Much easier to do because you didn't have the barrier of the Soviet Union saying, no, don't come, or you need a special visa or something. So perhaps, the political situation, the changing it that has helped, and maybe that may help the AMA, flourish in Armenia and elsewhere.
Well, it certainly needs to flourish elsewhere because trouble doesn't seem to stop. So, for my lifetime, I don't know how many more years I have to be on Earth, but I can see it continuing because there's troubles everywhere. But I think it totally depends on the generosity of people.
Well, my snapshot of the association, I was thoroughly impressed by the professionalism, what they've accomplished, and I'm as optimistic as you are about it continuing and doing good work. Well, it is the co-chairs of a wonderful event, just first class. I know the work you put into it and all the time and energy. So we're going to jump right into the 100th anniversary of the AMAA. John, Michèle, a privilege and honor to have you. And I want to thank you all for watching. I'm Bob Caprillion, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.